Welcome to the Wealth in Yourself podcast, a show dedicated to helping you master the complex subject of money by simplifying it through stories and actionable advice. I'm Josh St. Laurent, and this is Wealth in Yourself. Welcome to the Wealth in Yourself podcast, where we help people to design their ideal life and take control of their time and money. I'm your host, Josh St. Laurent. Today, we're joined by the debt-free doctor, Dr. Jeff Anzalone. He has been a periodontist with $300K in student loan debt to a thriving real estate investor. The eye-opening moment for him was when he broke his wrist and realized that without his hands, he wouldn't be able to secure his family's financial future. Today, we're going to dive into that journey and talk about the importance of mindset and why it's important to focus on health, wealth, and relationships. Dr. Anzalone, welcome. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So I touched upon the story just now, right? To go from 300K student loan debt to thriving real estate investor. Can you fill in the middle? Like, how did that happen? How'd that come to be?
Yeah, when I finished dental school, about 20 years ago, really the main financial quote gurus were Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman back then. And if you know anything about Dave Ramsey, that's who I mainly followed, he was a big anti-debt guy. You pay cash for everything, do the 7 baby steps. And that's what my wife and I followed. So it took about 7.5 years to pay off the $300,000 in student loan debts, plus some other smaller debts, plus that first home we purchased. And I thought whenever I reached that point, it was just like, okay, there's going to be this grand celebration and it's going to last a lifetime. But the enjoyment wore off after about 24 hours. And it was then I was kind of like, well, I guess I just have to work for the next 30 years and like all the other dentists. So about 2 or 3 years later, we went snow skiing. At the time, my kids were, I think, 6 and 8, and I fell, got the wrist injury. That was really my wake-up call. It's kind of hard to practice dentistry without, using your hands. And I knew at that point, yeah, I did have disability insurance, but it wasn't going to cover me, for my lifetime. I had to do something. I had to look at other places to do something, not to go, a lot of times people get into searching for passive income because they want more money or they want to buy stuff. I did it more for risk mitigation. If something happened to me or I couldn't work, I could still be able to provide for my family. And that's how I eventually got into it.
That's really fascinating. And I want to dive into why real estate and some of the properties that you did. Maybe before we go there, can you talk about what it was like to be 300K in student loan debt and how you got out from underneath that? What was that process?
Up until that point, I never had any debt before. And I guess in the back of my mind, it was kind of like, okay, well, I got all this debt. Maybe this is how people think about it. I got all this debt, but when I get out, I'm going to make a good income. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. So 2 weeks before I finished my training, the group that I was supposed to go in with, they pulled the deal out from under me. And it usually takes like a half a year, sometimes a year to get everything in order to go work at a practice. So now I've got the U-Haul packed up. I have a 2-month-old, $300,000 student loan debt. They don't teach you how to run a business or practice or anything about money in dental school or medical school or whatever. So that really put me back behind the 8 ball, because before I had a scarcity limited mindset from growing up, we can't afford this, that costs too much money, those sorts of things that you hear. And it really put me back to that big time, because now I'm in like this scarcity mode. I had to cling on to everything that I had. I had to scrape and save just to provide for my family. I started mowing yards again as a periodontist. It was very humbling, because I used to do that in high school and college, but I had to do whatever I could just to pay those bills early on. I wasn't afraid to work. I'm not afraid to work now. I was working out of multiple offices and everything. And once I kind of got to the point where I was paying the bills, and then I could get to the point where I started really attacking that debt. And Dave talks about the debt snowball. Attacking that first one, that smallest one. Then once that one's done, you take all that money, you roll it over to the next one, and so on and so forth. So that was how I just pretty much followed his plan. And I think it was really good for me, because I didn't really have a whole lot of financial education back then. And with all those things that had happened to me, it gave me some structure to follow different steps. Dave Ramsey is more for the typical American, I think, because most of them live paycheck to paycheck. They don't know how to handle money. And it's good to get them out of debt and keep them out of debt. But then you have people that make a good income that are like me, that have like this entrepreneurial drive in them. Not everybody's, some people are very comfortable working for people, and that's what they need. And they need a paycheck and a 401k and benefits, and that's fine. I don't want to say everything that I do, you or somebody else has to do, because you're not like me and I'm not like you. But for people like me, this was the path that I took. I want to be my own boss. That's why I have my own practice. I have my own businesses. I don't want to work for people. But again, there's other people like my brother. He's a civil engineer. He would much rather just work for somebody, and he's fine and content. And that's great. Different strokes for different folks. So if you're listening to people out there, financial gurus or whatever, take in what they have to say, but you need to use your brain that God gave you to think to the point where you know what's best for you. You got that gut feeling. Because I've taken stuff that I've learned from him, Dave Ramsey. I've taken stuff that I've learned from Grant Cardone, from Robert Kiyosaki, from Susie Orman, from all these different people. And I take what I think would be best for me, what you should do to think what's best for you, and then apply them to your life and then move on.
I love everything you just said. I mean, you're definitely in the right place. We have a lot of people listening who are entrepreneurs as well as real estate investors or aspiring to be real estate investors. And I'm picking up on a lot of the things that you said that transcend a lot of the people that I talk to. You know, you are seeking out knowledge from other people who are experts in that field, right? You have a strong work ethic. You'll do whatever it takes to get ahead. And it seems like that has been a common theme ever since you started off with the debt. You know, how does that translate to like what you're doing today?
I'll kind of go back in time a little bit. When I had that wrist injury, that was my wake up call. Cause like you look at people that make big transformations in their life. Let's take somebody that loses like 200 pounds. Usually when you ask them, man, how'd you do that? It's usually something happened to them. I had a heart attack, had a scare, had something. I had my pastor tell us, we don't change without pain. I wrote it down right here so I don't forget it. I read it every day. Think about that. You don't change without pain. Everybody likes to be in their comfort. People hate change. Last year, I went from paying my employees with checks to next payroll. Good news, girls. We're going to do direct deposit. You don't have to go to the bank. You wake up every other Thursday. You got money in your account. It was literally like pulling teeth. You would have thought the end of the world was coming because they hate change. You know, everybody's set in their ways. And now when you ask them, like, oh yeah, I hate going to the bank. I love direct deposit. That's the thing. We don't change without pain. My pain was from, physical pain from the wrist injury, but also the pain that what would I do if I couldn't provide for my family? Once I started looking at what other wealthy people do, and when I say wealthy people, I'm talking about like multimillionaires, billionaires, two main things stood out, and that's what guided me to real estate. Number one, 90% of these people invested in real estate. Back then, I didn't own any real estate. These people have multiple income streams, typically 7 to 10. Back then I had one. That made me focus on, okay, I need to invest in real estate for multiple income streams. Once I started hanging around these people, it was funny because you go to these conferences or you network with them and you say, well, what do you do for a living? They don't do anything. They don't say, I am a blank. I am a dentist. I'm a doctor. I'm an attorney. You don't do that. They say, I own real estate. I own companies. I own corporations. I own businesses, whatever. And the more that I learned that, the more I learned that they have a lot of free time and all of that income coming in. Guess what? It's like the lowest taxed income. They don't teach you any of this stuff in school. So they have all these different income streams coming in, freeing up their time and their tax much lower. Well, all you have to do is just don't reinvent the wheel. Just look at what everybody else is doing that is really wealthy and just apply it to your life. But here's the problem, because when I started all this stuff, the internet wasn't that big, YouTube, all that. So I wasn't just bogged down with this analysis paralysis because there's just so much freaking information out there. There was limited. I mean, when I went to high school and college, I had to go to the library to write a term report or a term paper. I had to actually look up stuff. I had encyclopedias at my house. And you go through the process, you look it up and you just start doing it. When I was in dental school, you only had like so many crowns, so many extractions, so many implants to do. You didn't stay there for 10 years and become an expert. Well, was it 10,000 hours, the Malcolm Gladwell book? You learn enough to be, quote, dangerous, and then you get out and you do. There's not enough doers out there. And people complain about the 99% of the people, and then you got the 1%. The 1%ers are no smarter than 99%ers. They just do. And that's it. And if you sit around all the time and I see these kids in high school and college, they're always on their phone and stuff. And I always tell them, like, you would just take an hour a day instead of 6 hours on your phone, 5 hours on your phone, and 1 hour a day on your phone and learn something, learn a skill. You would completely change your life. Guess what? Nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, it's so true. I think it's come up more than once now. Like you got to put in the work and you have to seek out the information and it's more available than ever. So I'm curious to hear from you. What was your first step, that first action step that you took? Maybe your first property once you had the knowledge and you felt comfortable taking that leap. What did that look like for you?
Back when I started, crowdfunding was real big because I wanted to stay focused on my biggest wealth building tool, my dental income, take the extra income, invest it into real estate for passive income. And I started doing some stuff, small crowdfunding deals, $1,000 here, $5,000 there. And eventually started growing that more and then started working directly with people. Back then, there wasn't a whole lot of information for, doctors, high income earners about this. So I started a blog. I took a course, debtfreedoctor.com. And it was more about sort of my journey with Dave Ramsey, hence the name Debt Free Doctor, and then how I've transitioned into what we're talking about now. And the funny thing was after maybe 5 or 6 months, I'm spending all these time, I'm writing all these articles and I'm like, well, nobody's reading them. What's the point? And so then I spent like, I don't know, $500. I got a mentor. He helped me with the process. And again, this is why there's successful people that blog and most people that start, they quit with YouTube or blog or whatever. I learned the skill, like how to take a keyword phrase, take passive income. You try to write an article on passive income, it's going to be very, very hard to rank because that's a very high volume yet highly competitive keyword. Okay. The key is finding high volume, low competitive keyword. So instead of writing an article maybe like on passive income, could be like how passive income is taxed from rental property. See how much that's like called a long tail keyword, but there's a whole lot less articles on that than there is passive income. And once I started doing that, my blog has taken off. I get just all this free organic traffic from Google. And then it grew from there. Same thing with YouTube. I've taken the time to learn the skill. I'm no smarter than anybody else. I take action. And I notice that people that are successful, they just take action. And once I started doing that, then I started growing this following. And now I look up and I have this totally other separate businesses that have grown out of just from that one skill it started, learning how to blog. And then from there, it's teaching people about real estate, coaching, raising capital, all these different things. But if you just learn the skill, like marketing, selling, communication, just learn the basic skills. They teach everything for free online. If people will learn that, that's all it is to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like you started with crowdfunding. How is that transformed, today in the type of investing that you do now?
Yeah, the crowdfunding, I started doing a couple of deals and then I jumped into the larger deal, which was a $50,000 apartment complex in Oklahoma City. And long story short, all the investors in that deal lost their money, including my 50 grand. Most people would have quit, but it made me realize I didn't know what I was doing. I was looking at the pretty pictures that people were putting online and not vetting the sponsor, not going there, walking the property. They did not disclose that the sponsor was moving into an area that had a lot of crime rate. People were moving out. He thought, I'm going to buy this building. I'm going to put a bunch of money in it. People will come back. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have invested, but we were not disclosed that. And there was, talk about a lawsuit and this and that. But anyway, I learned that I did not know what I was doing. So I had to take a step back and then learn about how to vet sponsors, how to underwrite deals, really had to learn how to do this. And then I started investing, no more crowdfunding. I started, I have a whole article and, I wrote all about it so people can learn about it. How I lost 50,000 in real estate. But again, I don't call it failure. I don't call it mistakes. This is what I learned. Whenever you get beat in something or you lose something, you fail, it's a learning experience. You take it, you move on, you apply it to your life and you move on. You don't live in the past, you live now. And that really helped me become, am I a perfect, real estate investor, whatever? No, but that helped me to start connecting with these groups now that I'm working with one-on-one in these syndication groups to where I'm more involved. I go to the properties. Some of these properties I find, I've been able to network with people. So now I have a guy, him and I buy mobile home parks together. But it's also important that you're around other people that are trying to do what you're doing. When I was going to dental meetings for the first 15 years, nobody was doing this. So I was always around people that didn't want to be there. They were just there to get their continuing education hours, and then they left. But now that I've gotten out of that network and more into real estate, wealth, health, that sort of people, then I'm able to make the connections, which really are helping me to grow and, expand my network from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I am loving this recurring theme of learning because it's so important. And all of the people performing at a top level have talked about, hey, I started here, I found a mentor, or I sought out this course. Can you talk about, and you've already touched upon a lot of them, but some of the different ways that people who are seeking out this knowledge, where can they go to learn some of these skills that you're talking about that are so important?
Everything's free online, whether it's podcasts like this, YouTube, articles. But again, it circles back for what are you going to do with the information? And unfortunately, most people don't do anything. And the older that I've gotten, I realized that time is your most precious resource because it's limited. You can't make any more time. You make plenty more money. So here's an example. Let's say I wanted to learn how to buy, let's say, a self-storage facility. Well, I could go online, I could go to meetings, I could take courses online, and it may take me a year and a half to get comfortable. Or I could find somebody that's doing exactly that already does it, pay money, and in 2 months start. And think about it. If you do that multiple times, I could get to the year and a half mark, and I could think about how many people that can mentor me. That's what really separates the people right there, from the doers to just people that just, there's nothing wrong with learning. But if you really want to do something, you really have to take action. A lot of times it's good to have a coach or a mentor because they're going to hold you accountable. Think about if you want to lose weight and you're like, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds by the summer. I have a wedding to go to or something. And you get like somebody that, okay, what'd you eat yesterday? Man, I ate some chocolate donuts. And so they're making you accountable. Okay, let's get back on it instead of just you trying to do it yourself. Some people are very disciplined. They can do it on their own, but most people can't. But if I were to say the number one trait for successful people that I've learned is one word: consistency. That's it. You look at somebody that's ripped up, they're in good health, they're, six-pack abs or whatever. Guess what? That guy's consistent in the gym. He's consistent with his macros. There's no other way. Somebody that's wealthy, that makes $75,000 a year, but they have a lot of wealth. Guess what? That person is consistently invested over time. It's not rocket science. It's just everybody wants everything now, and they won't put in the work to learn and actually take action and be consistent with it. That's it. There's no get rich quick. Here's the secret formula. Do this, buy this course. It's just being consistent and consistently doing it. That's it.
It's such an important message. I mean, there's so much misinformation out there and get rich quick schemes, that I'm constantly hearing about, as a financial planner. People bring these things to me. Hey, I heard this on the internet. So I'm glad that you went there, and the consistency is so, so key. I wanted to ask you, for you personally, have there been big learning lessons that you have grown from, maybe that others could hear and learn from as well?
I think that people don't look at their taxes, their tax situation enough. Because again, when I was talking to you about the wealthy people, they have all these other streams of income coming in and they're all taxed at the lowest level. People think, okay, I've got to work more shifts, more hours, weekends, days, whatever to make more money. But guess what? That active income is the highest tax income. And most people's accountants, they just want to do your taxes. They won't help you with tax strategy. So that's a very important thing to do. Now you can say, oh, I'm going to spend all this time learning the tax code and all that. Talk to 5 wealthy people and ask them who their accountant is. And then take 3 of those accountants and go interview them, and then let them teach you. Let them do your taxes, and along the way, tell me why you're doing this. What can I do better? And, one of the things that I've learned, I'm as filing a real estate professional status now, Trump, Buffett, Bezos, all these people, and they say they don't pay any taxes. They don't, because they understand and they use people that know how to play the tax game. They know the tax code and they're expert. And you can go out and you can get depreciation from one area, from real estate, to offset your income. Think about how much time that would free you up. Yeah, the example that I give, the typical $1 million dental practice has like a 70% overhead. So they have to produce $1 million to bring home 300 grand, right? 70% overhead. Then they're going to pay let's say they pay 50% in taxes. So they do all that work and they put $150,000 in their pocket, because half of 300,000 is, I'm just using round numbers. So you can tell somebody you can work full time, produce $1 million to put at the end of the day $150,000 in your pocket. Or you can work, let's say you're working 50 hours a week. You can work like 20 hours a week, well under 50% of the time. Have real estate offsetting your income. You're putting $150,000 in your pocket, paying 0 taxes. It's the time component. So you can go from working 5 days a week to 2.5 days a week. At the end of the day, putting the same amount of money if you know how to play the tax game. It's that simple. But again, people don't want to learn how to do it or hire people. And that's why everybody's miserable and burned out. And that's why they're going to it's that cycle. Most people don't know what they want. Like if I were to ask somebody, hey, what do you want? I don't know. So if you got in a car right now and you're like, all right, let's go. Like, where are we going? I don't know. How do you know where to drive? And until you're very, very clear, it's really tough to get anywhere in life. Like I'm talking about like crystal clear. Like in 3 years, I want $100,000 of passive income coming in from this source or this. I mean, you got to get really, really clear on it. And I'm working half the time and I'm doing travel, whatever it is. Once you get super clear, then you're able to figure out how to get there based on that. But until you do, because a lot of times people will come to me and go, okay, I want some passive income. Okay, why do you want that? I see other people doing it, so I want to do it. The likelihood of them succeeding is very low.
I'm over here nodding vigorously because I see this all the time as well. And it's so, so important. If you don't know where you're going, how are we going to create a plan to get there? Right. And then the second thing you said about taxes, I think a lot of people just don't realize it's the biggest detractor of their wealth. You talk to people and they think they're going to cut back on Starbucks and become wealthy that way, or, rent a room in their house. But typically it's taxes. If you can really get that strategy dialed in, and to your point, go find an expert. You could sit there for years trying to learn the tax code and they're just going to change it on you. So I can hear listeners, kind of thinking of this question of how do you approach some of these mentor educator type relationships? I know that's a hurdle for a lot of people I talk to. Hey, I found a guy who's doing, what I want to do, or a gal who's doing what I want to do. How do I open that door? How do I start that conversation and say, listen, I want to get to where you are. Can I partner with you? Can I work with you, pay you for your time? How does that sound when you're approaching people like that?
I have the same questions too. There's actually a guy here that went to high school with my dad, and he's a billionaire. He has kind of a mixed reputation in town, from, very shrewd business person to from my dad and other people like, oh, the nicest guy would do anything from him. I just approached him a couple of years ago and I just asked him, of course he knew who I was because of my dad. And I said, would you ever mind if I just like came to your office or something and I just maybe ask you questions about real estate, or you just kind of tell me some stories? And the worst thing they can tell you is no. But I've really found that these people are very willing to share this. I guess most people just don't ask them. There's a YouTube video, I think it's called School of Hard Knocks, that I follow. And the guy just goes around these different towns like Miami and Dallas and Texas. And he just goes around the streets and he finds these millionaires. He's like, starts asking them questions, and the majority of them really open up and they're willing to share. That's how you do it. And I learned more from that 2-hour meeting than I did from like 2 or 3 years in college. And I told my wife that when I got home. It was just mind boggling that you see somebody that comes from such humble beginnings that can build that. But you know what? The theme was of all of his stories, he was consistent with what he was doing. And it was just kind of flatlining a little bit like, and all of a sudden he hit that one thing, you get that one connection, or you get, and it's just like you take off. That's all it was. And then from there, sky's the limit.
That's so true. So I want to transition a little bit. I wanted to ask you about your ebook. What can you tell us about the ebook and who is it for?
There's so much information out there about passive income and this and that. So I wrote a real short book. It's a passive income guide. It's free. You can go to my website and download it. I'll give you the link. And there's nothing new in there that you probably haven't already read. But more importantly, when you sign up for that book, you'll start getting some of the articles and videos that I put out and Instagram posts that will go along with that will help you with the process. And then I have a group for accredited investors. So if somebody is a accredited investor and they want to invest in real estate, what I do is I set up a free call with them, learn a little bit about them and what they're trying to accomplish, and then help them set up a plan. Again, it's free to get them on the right path, because real estate isn't right for everybody. And I'll just be upfront with people and say, you know what, you're too far in debt, or you got other things going on. I would put it on the back burner or whatever. I have nothing to sell you, versus if you go to somebody selling products or services, they may just be focused on that. Because I remember how it was whenever I was starting off, and people that just gave me unbiased information, that's what helped me the most.
Yes, definitely. So we'll make sure to link that in the show notes make it easy for people to find. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, ask 3 questions we try to ask towards the end of the show here, a little more personal to you. So question number 1 is, what does living a wealthy life look like for you?
That's easy. Just having the time to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and where I want. It's all about time.
Absolutely. If you could give one message to someone working to gain financial freedom who isn't there yet, what would it be?
Some of the things that we already talked about. Again, get very crystal clear on your goals, exactly what you want. Most people have problems with 3 areas, or one of 3 areas, something in health, wealth, or relationships. somebody having a problem right now, if you're dealing with something, I can guarantee you it's probably one of those three things: health, wealth, and relationship. So figure out maybe in each of those areas what your goals look like. And then once you have that, find somebody that can help you in each of those, or maybe one person can help you in all of them, but more than likely it'll be split up. If you need a marriage counselor, if you need somebody, a trainer, or you need somebody that, that's very successful or whatever, and a lot of times they can tell you who you should speak with. Let's say you have like somebody helping you with building wealth, and then you can maybe say, hey, kind of having a hard time getting my spouse on the same page. What do you recommend? Well, I'd recommend talking to this person, or I'd recommend this book or this podcast or something like that. So take advice from the people that really have your best interest and then move on from there.
I love that answer. So third question, potentially the toughest of the day here, is if you only had $1,000 and you were starting over, what would be the first thing you would do with that money?
That's a good question. Whatever your skills are now, like you could take away everything, but you can't take away what's in my mind. So I could go back, I could start a practice, I could start investing in real estate and that sort of thing. So I really wouldn't be scared of taking risk because of your knowledge. And always remember that. I think people sit on the sidelines a lot of times because they're in that scarcity mode. They're afraid to move forward. But if you're comfortable enough or confident enough in what you do, that shouldn't matter. I would go to the people I would network with, or I have networked with, and start a business. If I didn't want to start another practice, whatever, start a business. A lot of times you can invest in real estate with no money. You can go into these deals when you network with people. You help them bring capital. You can help them maybe you can go find a deal or whatever. Help somebody that's trying to grow something, a company, a business, real estate. And a lot of times they'll pay you for that. And again, it's building your network if you only have $1,000 worth, because you're going to get much further and faster doing it like that than trying to do it by yourself.
So true. So for the people listening who want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you online?
Yeah, they can find me on my website, debtfreedoctor.com. Have the ebook on there. It's Passive Investor Guide. And then my YouTube channel link is there. And also Instagram is on there as well.
Perfect. We'll put those in the show notes, make it easy for everyone listening. Is there anything I haven't asked you, anything we've missed that we should be talking about?
If you're not in the habit of reading, you've probably heard this before. It's a little corny, but leaders are readers. Get in the habit of reading, whether it's a page a night, 5 pages a night, whatever. Just make that a habit. And that's another trait that I didn't talk about that the really successful people do. They read all the time. They're always reading books, just become a sponge for knowledge. And then that's how I typically learn how my next book is going to be, because they reference it in the book, or somebody says something on a podcast. I've had my mentor was this person. And it's funny. You think there's all these successful people out there, but once you start noticing it, it's just a small group. They're referencing each other's podcast or referencing each other. I went to this guy's mastermind, come to find out this other guy's coaching me, and the person that coached him coached the guy with the mastermind. So everything's like it's interconnected. It's funny.
It's so true. Well, Dr. Anzalone, thank you for being here. I know I learned a lot. This has been great. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. I enjoyed being here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. This has been the Wealth in Yourself podcast, where we help people to design their ideal life and take control of their time and money. Our guest today was Dr. Jeff Anzalone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. The Wealth in Yourself podcast is hosted by me, Josh St. Laurent, and edited and produced by Ray Haycraft. To learn more about how to make your money work for you, visit us at www.wealthinyourself.com and connect with us on all social media at Wealth in Yourself. This podcast is educational in nature and is not meant to be investment advice. Please do not construe anything said to be advice, and the opinions of the guests may or may not represent the opinions of Wealth in Yourself. This podcast and the information presented are separate from my employment at Golden Gate University. Still, they are part of my mission to make no-cost financial knowledge more accessible. If you like the show, please take a moment to leave us a review. We read all of your feedback, and we want to make sure we cover the topics that matter most. If you have a specific subject you'd like us to explore, or a guest you'd love to hear interviewed, don't hesitate to shoot us a direct message. And as always, thanks for listening.